I'm going to try to go from 0 to as close as to 365 as I can, making a video about gaming the day after. Whether that's a review, or a top 10 list, or just a recap of my trophy and Chibo hunting. I'm not elderly, but I'm certainly not young anymore, as much as that pains me. Once you start nearing the big 40, you see people just kind of drop, and tomorrow doesn't feel guaranteed anymore. You don't feel invincible, not that I ever did, but I don't know how long I have. And I kind of want to leave something behind that is somewhat of my thoughts. I thought about writing, but once I'm gone, likely so will that blog be delisted or just not paid for hosting. And then I thought about YouTube. YouTube itself is no guarantee to stick around, but it's been around for quite a long time as it is, and has a shot of being here after I'm gone. And I think about a friend that I've lost who his videos are still here. His work is here. Even if no one's going to ever watch his stuff, you can still look him up and see the memory of who he was and what kind of person he was. So, much like the reruns of older shows when I was growing up, that's my aim. I would like to create some videos that will leave some legacy, leave some syndication of me. Maybe that's what nobody wants. Maybe that's something somebody wants. But either way, this is a series about videos about my takes on gaming subjects. Today, I want to talk about Anthem, the game that's shutting down by the time most people actually see this video. Anthem was the second attempt during the PS4 generation by BioWare of making a new IP. Well, I guess that's the wrong way to put it. It's the second attempt at trying to restart, rebrand itself. So, Dragon Age Inquisition was co-developed as a PS3, PS4 title. And although it won Game of the Year awards as PS4, yeah, look that up. Dragon Age Inquisition won Game of the Year awards. It's a very slow year. Mass Effect Andromeda was a PS4, Xbox One only generation title. There was no back compatibility for the older generation, and it was also a restart on the series. Mass Effect 3 had ended, and they didn't know really how to continue from there, so they kind of pivoted a little bit, and it didn't work. We'll eventually talk about that game, but Anthem was their next attempt at something, and whether it hit or not is pretty much a guarantee no. Anthem had a lot of build up to it. It was billed as the next big Mass Effect, Dragon Age, KOTOR like series that BioWare was going to put out. It was billed as a Destiny killer. It was focused on beautiful graphics and jetpacks, in these Iron Man like armor. And a lot of their big campaigning that I had to sit through as a GameStop manager back in the day was our world, your story. Meaning that the open world expedition part of the game was drop in, drop out, seamless co op. Players would be able to join your missions or not join your missions, and everything was a kind of a shared experience out in an RNG randomized server that would host however many players. But the city was your story. And that meant that all of the character interactions you had and how the plot went was entirely determined on your choices. None of that is really true. Well, I guess the drop in, drop out co op is actually pretty cool, unless you're by yourself. Then it never really happened. So, for some reason, Anthem's drop in, drop out co op only really works when you have two people already in a mission. Then you get matched up instantly with two other people. They just kind of just drop in. But when you're by yourself, you rarely will see people join you. Now, what about the city and the choices, story? Everyone makes such a big deal on that stuff. It's why people get so angry at Telltale. No, nothing matters of what you do. The choices that you make don't lock you out of missions. This is not a Persona 3 social link problem. This is entirely a situation where the choices are. If I had to praise Anthem for anything, it would be its graphics. Anthem's world is gorgeous, and telling you a story about ancient relics that should terraform the planet and making it look so pretty is a victory in itself. I think it's a lot of what made the original trailers for Anthem pop so much. It's that lush wildlife, the mixtures of snow and grass and magma levels. There's a variety to Anthem's map. It's just a shame it's awful to traverse it. Anthem's map is quite possibly one of the worst laid out maps you will ever encounter. You can't put any kind of beacons down to mark where you want to go. No breadcrumb trails for you unless it's a main mission, then they'll tell you where to go. Anthem's maps are sectioned off into, think of them as counties in a state, but they're very hard to tell when you've bled into another one. And looking at it and trying to follow it more than just a general direction of north, south, west, and east is kind of impossible. It really is a shame because the game itself is really nicely done. And even in the Citadel area, that's what I assume that's what the vibe they were going for the Fort Sarsis, was nice to look at. It had a very mixture of futuristic as well as medieval look to it, with a little bit of steampunk at the entrance. It's a nice thing to see, but overall, where Anthem falls apart is its characterization. The look of character models are usually not so good, and in motion they're fine, but a lot of their standing positions feel like they are dolls vibrating and ready to explode at any given moment. NPCs hold their arms in very uncomfortable looking positions that twitch violently, and it's a stark contrast to when you see them interact at a bar and punch somebody out, or argue with another NPC that's standing right in front of them. They're animated, they feel alive, they look alive, but NPCs in Anthem tend to idle out in front of you. People in Anthem really come down to three factions, being the freelancers, the arcanists, or the sentinels. There's also the just generic civilians in the town. They're fine too. But the problem is a lot of these characters just don't have characterization. They don't feel like characters. And this is a problem that BioWare had with Mass Effect Andromeda and didn't used to have, but it's a problem here. There are only a few characters I would say that even have arcs that are interesting or worth paying attention to. Dax is probably the best NPC in that you encounter in the game. That's not part of the really main story, and the um, I don't know what to call this guy, but there's a guy that splits into three people, and it's a really bizarre science fiction fantasy hole, and it's a lot of fun. Even if the character himself isn't interesting, his actions make up for it because he feels like just this chaotic, unstable person as he literally splits into three people. But most characters are just boring. There's a woman who doesn't like your manners. There's a woman who thinks you're her dead son, but you're not. There's a guy who's just an asshole and gossips about everybody. But these aren't interesting characters. The commander of the Sentinels is so lifeless and stoic that he even all of his dialogue just sounds just not like nothing. The bartender who has a connection to a very rough group that roughs people up. You think she would have some like real deep characterization or personality? She doesn't. The most characters end up being just their job. And that is cool when you go to a Walmart and you pass by a guy who's stocking shelves and maybe he hasn't figured his life quite out. But Anthem is a world full of strange terraforming planet monsters, ancient relics, get rich quick schemes. There's a royal system still active in this place. There's a lot of history in this world, both religious and scientific and just tradition. And most of the characters don't follow it, and instead they expect you to look at codexes to back up how cool these characters are, but they're not. What is cool though is the shooting in Anthem. I actually like it a lot. It reminds me of Destiny, who they're clearly copying, and Anthem's shooting feels on point, on target. I think actually the most interesting thing is the later guns toward the end game all feel kind of unique and have some kind of element to them that makes them feel like, wow, if they had just committed to this across the board, this could have been something actually people would have talked about. There's a gun that you get very late in the game, which basically slings discs like a pizza shooter and ricochets off things. Pretty cool. There's a sniper rifle that you charge up like a bow and arrow to explode things. There's some good weapons near the end. There's a grenade launcher, which basically is like a sticky bomb launcher, which can cause just complete havoc with the AI. It's a lot of fun to use. I think most of Anthem's missions boil down to crowd control. None of the none of the actual missions are really that hard in terms of what is going on and when going down. The hardest enemy type is the Titan, and you could just spam ultimate abilities and explosives to really get rid of him. You don't really need a lot of the planning and strategy that you might need for other things. You can just kind of wail on them. And that's kind of the problem with most of the enemies in Anthem. They look different. The scars kind of remind you of like organic red, angry red Geth from Mass Effect. The Dominion have their own kind of like Death Trooper look to them. There's the Outlaws who look just like Mysterio's henchmen. There's elite types that kind of fly around, little wizards that remind you of Destiny. There's bigger beast types you fight. There's enough variants that for a game this short that I think that it works. And hearing that they cut a bunch of types, I guess it makes sense because a lot of this kind of feels similar, and that's kind of really the problem is most of these enemies just feel the same. They are fodder for you to beat up and shoot and look cool doing. And yeah, you do that. And that's one of the big praises I can say is the javelins are the focus of the game and they are something that definitely works. You start off with the interceptor, which is very much kind of like a ninja like Iron Man suit. Its ultimate ability is a bunch of sword slashes. That's not very good, honestly, but its other abilities are very ninja like, and it's kind of like it kind of feels like a throwback to Warframe. It works. The interceptor is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun flipping around. It's a fast little Iron Man suit. You then can unlock and choose which one you want to unlock next. The Ranger feels like you would imagine most third person shooters would. It's a very Soldier 76 like Iron Man kind of suit. All these suits can fly, but this one feels more focused on firearms and making those short range kind of explosions. And it's a great crowd control bot. The Colossus is a big hulking bot that can do a melee drop out of the sky and cause a big boom, or can fire big lasers, and its ultimate is basically just firing like the nuke from Fallout 3. It's slow. It doesn't have the dash capabilities as the other two that I mentioned so far, but it's definitely a bot that would be really useful on, I guess, like a legendary difficulty if you decide to do post game. And then finally, the storm, which is hilarious because this is a bot that I didn't get access to until maybe 15-20 hours after beating the game, because the storm for me was my last one unlocked at level 26. Yes, 26. We'll get to that in a second. And the storm bot basically feels like Destiny's warlock character. I think it's okay. It may be a little too on the nose. There might have been other ways to go about it. But yeah, that's what that one feels like. And yeah, the unlock system for this game is kind of awful. They obviously wanted you to be interested enough to keep playing this game until you saw all the content. But to do the real way to do that is just to have content that people want to see. Instead of having a bunch of unlocks for characters, forcing players to hit level 26 out of 30, mind you, to just get all four Iron Man suits is kind of silly. They all should have been available within the first four levels, just to give you a choice. There might be some people who would say that's choice paralysis. I guarantee that not everyone wanted to do the interceptor for the get-go, and then you can't even unlock the second robot suit to level 8, which, if you're just playing through the game, that could be halfway through the campaign. That's kind of stupid. So yeah, I'm not a really big fan of how they unlock, but I think the unlocks themselves, the Iron Man suits themselves, are fine. And the way you would keep people playing is if you wanted people to do the trophies for the like all the gadgets for each robot. That's the big thing about Anthem that's really strange in comparison to a lot of other games of this type, is you can't buy anything really. There's a few things that are available in store. You can eventually craft some stuff, but it's really not worth it to craft new gear. You're basically waiting for new types to be unlocked by doing missions and keep using the other gear enough that it triggers an unlock that you get a drop of that gadget. Each javelin has 12 gadgets you can use. You start with 3 for each of them, and the other 9 you're going to have to just keep playing as that javelin until you unlock them. The challenge is, trophy wise, to do them is to complete 4 missions with each gadget, which means you're not just doing 4 missions per gadget for 12 gadgets. You're still having to doing a lot more because you have to unlock those gadgets in the first place. And you could be the unfortunate person like me who had the Colossus down to 1 gadget that just would not unlock for several hours. And what can you do? But you just keep using all your stuff and just keep hoping that it'll just pop. And that's a silly method. I think all the unlocks for this game were handled in a very strange way. The fact that you basically earn a bunch of money and you'll never really use it is also really peculiar for a game like this. And if you were paying to win, you're only able to buy cosmetics. So there is no pay to win, really, and there is no earn to win. There's just hope to God something dropped by RNG, and I don't really like that. For the rest of the trophies, it's mostly just doing the story and the side quests, but the thing about that really sucks is there is a lot of glitches. Not only will certain cutscenes not load, but certain times you'll end up loading into a mission in multiplayer, or unfortunately even single player, and load into an abyss. It's really weird to see a game 6 years later in that kind of state. But yeah, that's Anthem. Anthem will constantly have glitches where you return to the town and the map doesn't work. It has the map scrolled to the bottom right and won't let you move up to see what's in town. It'll tell you that people want to talk, and then when you go to talk to them, they don't have anything to say because they get shy as soon as you come up to talk to them. So your map will always tell you that Dax and the triplet guy will have a bunch to say to you, but it's not true. They don't. They have nothing to say to you after a certain point, and the game is just absolutely lying to you. Glitches like that are all over the place in Anthem. Some of the story missions feel like they can glitch out. Sometimes you go a while in post game if you don't do the side quests right away, or even do them right away in story mode, and side quests just kind of stop, even though they shouldn't in post game, considering you've beaten the game at that point. But they just kind of stop, and then eventually you load the town enough times that the game decides to give you the next thing to do. There was no talking to anyone. It was just a number of times loading the city, I guess, is a trigger, which is maybe even sillier. The rest of the trophies are really just a mixture of using literally each gun type. And so if there's machine guns, there are 3 different machine guns and getting 50 kills with each one of them. There's the gadgets that I mentioned before, story missions, and then the worst one, which is probably the collecting. I really liked exploring each district and finding all the big landmarks and big overlooks to find. I thought that was kind of cool, but the real sad part of it is there are a bunch of collectibles that you can find only when you see question marks on your little top radar. They don't appear on your map, and they appear up top, and you have to just kind of suss out where they are. You know, they above you, below you, and then you don't know if they're going to be even worth it, because the thing about these collectibles is that they sometimes are green glowing symbols that you have to collect. You have to find all of them in the game, or they could be like notes from the past, or they could just be scrap, which doesn't really help you in any kind of way whatsoever. But you have no way to tell what kind of collectible it is. Not really handled well, and the fact that a lot of these collectibles don't spawn the same time, they're kind of RNG on if they spawn at all, also really, really sucks. And the rest of it is just grinding, getting to level 30 to get yourself the best gear, to get enough of a gear rating on your Iron Man suit so you can finish a mission with a masterwork javelin, getting all the loyalist trophies for each faction to level 3 completed. These are things that just you add up by talking to people constantly, doing missions, opening up collectibles that's tied, quote unquote, to that faction. And really you'll end up spending a lot of your time, once you're done all your missions and collecting and shooting, just grinding out the gadget trophies for finishing 4 missions with each gadget, as you do quick play missions of helping out random online people, as you just basically end up in an endless loop of online mission repeating. But you get 25% more XP, so you'll do that because, one, 4 people make a mission faster, because unlike something like Monster Hunter World where the difficulty increases, the difficulty stays the same no matter what. 2, you want the more XP, and 3, you need to get a bunch of missions done to get these gadgets done. At a certain point, you're going to just be looking for drops, and that can be kind of maddening. But eventually, you'll start to notice, as you get a higher rating of a javelin, that you'll notice that the ratings of drops will start to also drop higher with you. It seemed like I was only getting uncommon drops for a while, but once I hit epic, midway through epic javelin rating, I started getting tons of epic rating drops, and all of a sudden my gear was just substantially increasing after a long period of just not. And that's Anthem in a nutshell. It's inconsistent. if you look at the game itself, I kind of knew this before release. As I said at the beginning of the video, I went to a GameStop manager conference where they told us all about this game. And it was, you know, our world, your story. That was the big focus for them, and they were going to have this big thing where you get to. There's a big thing at GameStop Manager Conference where you got to play all these play all the games that you were being educated on, and get to see a lot of this stuff months before they release. Something like Rage 2 is a game I got to play, weirdly enough, almost a year and a half before release. That's kind of crazy to think about, but Anthem was supposed to be there, and they bailed out the last second and said just had a guy handing out posters. It was right then I kind of had a feeling that there was something rotten in Denmark, and when it did release, yeah, you could tell things were going bad when a news story leaks out that 3 days before they launched, they considered just scrapping the flying in this game. That's Anthem in a nutshell. It's a lot of promise, but without a lot of execution. Anthem was going to have a big rebuild where they fixed everything. That didn't happen. Instead, they opted to kill it. And a few days after this video is posted, Anthem will be gone forever. It is not playable offline, and there is no way to play it. It will be gone. It will be... In the end, Anthem will be defined by its legacy of not connecting to gamers. For me, Anthem is a game that I would probably put it around 6 out of 10. Yes, there are aspects I enjoyed it. There is even part of the loop I enjoy. But so much of the game revolves around talking to people who are characters in a world that aren't interested in being there. It's a world that doesn't have its payout to its story. It's a world that handicaps its only interesting mechanics with the javelins just to keep you going, with enemies that don't attack, and a world event system that clogs into the missions and pretty much is just hit on repeat, repeat, repeat in the worst way. The best parts of Anthem are just flying around and shooting a bunch of guys up and not being bogged down by having to collect pieces of an exploding artifact or puzzles that really don't make much sense. It's a poisonous game alone. It's better in co-op, but either way, it's sung its last song. I hear the anthem now, clearly, and it's saying goodbye.